now we'll look at Mark chapter 12. And what we'll do, you'll have your vocabulary quizzes in my hand. And so I will shuffle them. And we'll take them as they come then. You know, just to be fair.
We can't kind of head that way.
Yeah.
You know, that's true.
Erickson's class.
That's true, isn't it?
That is true.
All right. You're up, John.
All right.
Number 1.
And he began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard and built a fence. Remember all this vocabulary, unusual vocabulary.
I know. Did this kind of freak you out when you got the first one? I thought, this is going to be a hard week.
And dug a wine trough and built a tower and leased it to farmers and went on a journey.
Very nice. Very nice. Didn't he do well?
A lot of ants.
Yes, there are a lot of ands. All right. So he began to speak to them in parables. What case and use is autois, do you think?
Case use. It's a dative case. Direct object?
Well, I think you could look at it that way. I think you can look at a word like to speak as taking its object in the dative. You could also look at the object being understood and not expressed, and you could take it as an indirect object too. Like he began to speak implied words to them. So you could take it as an indirect object. But it's probably best to say that a word like that takes its object in the dative for that reason, right? Because we wouldn't say he began to speak stuff to them, right? That's kind of redundant. I mean, we know if he's speaking, but there he's using words. All right. In parables, what case and use do you think that is?
It's a dative case also.
Yeah.
And a reference?
Now that "and" right there gives you a
Oh.
big clue. Now you could call it a locative with the "n," but it's not, because we're not talking location here, right?
Certain prepositions?
Well, yeah, you could get away with saying certain prepositions, but also with "n," you're probably talking about an instrument of means, an instrumental of means. So a dative means, or an instrumental of means, you would say. All right. What kind of word is lalain? How would you parse lalain?
Present active infinitive?
Okay, so it's a present. All right. So what kind of present do you think that is? He began to speak.
It's an infinitive, right?
It's an infinitive, but it's also a present infinitive. So what I'm asking is, what kind of present is it?
Oh, I see. Now we're thinking of what we did today.
That's right. Hmm?
Progressive.
Instead of,
Maybe a dramatic friend?
No, I don't think so.
Oh. Descriptive?
No, I don't think so. Well, you could say you could say progressive present. You could say that because he's speaking to them, and you could look at it. I mean, and it is in some sense progressive, but I think there's actually a better one than that. And I think when you hear it, you'll agree in the context. Anybody?
Historically present.
Nope.
Customary.
Nope.
instantaneous.
Nope.
Iterative.
Keep going. You'll get it. Iterative. Why iterative?
Because you did it more than once, continually.
Is he gonna do it again?
He's gonna speak to them in parables on more than one occasion, right? So he began to speak to them in parables.
I think that iterative is because to them has to make this refers back to the priests and the scribes and the elders and those people, and he knew their hearts were hardened, and so he was just going to, I mean, in an iterative sense, he was just going to speak to them in parables.
Well, he spoke to more than just those people in parables too. But you could say progressive, but I think iterative is probably better. All right, very nice. Let's see who's going to be next. Hey, Stacy.
Okay. And he sent to the tenant farmers at the appropriate time a servant in order that from the tenant farmers he might receive from the fruit of the vineyard.
All right. So he sent to the farmers in the time a servant. All right. Let's think about the use of that article, to, the time. What kind of use of the article do you think that is?
At the appropriate time, I would translate.
Well, what time is it that he sent the servant? It was
At an
appropriate.
appointed-
Why was it appropriate?
At an appointed time.
Why was it appropriate?
It's harvest.
It was harvest time.
It's a season. Harvest season.
It's a harvest season. That's right.
As opposed to the...
So he's talking about he sent him at the time. Okay, he sent to the vine dressers in the time a servant.
It's, well,
But Kairos also means season too, right?
Yeah.
point of time, season. Yeah.
Could you buy that it is an article used with something well known? Harvest time would have been well known to him.
Familiar, I would say familiar.
In the context, something familiar. Yeah, right. All right, something familiar to them. Yeah, well-known use of the article. All right, and of course that's a locative of time, isn't it? Right. They sent him a slave, that's an accusative direct object, or a servant. In order that para, now that's interesting, para the vine dressers. Para means alongside. He's going to get, in order that from the vine dressers he might take from the fruit of the vineyard. From, but para here for from.
Yeah, that's really different.
It's not ek as indicating the source, but it is para indicating that the fruit of the vineyard is with them, alongside them. I think that's appropriate because they were not the owners of the thing. They weren't really the ultimate source of the fruit, but they had it. They had control of it.
And so then he would be sent down to sample some of what they had already picked. They were possibly carrying it.
Well, it's not necessarily that it's literally on their side or something. It's just that they, the fruit is with them. But it's not apa from or ek source. It is para, right? So they were attending to it, but they didn't, single-handedly produce it.
Right.
Because he planted the vineyard, right? So I think that's an interesting and appropriate use of the preposition at that point. All right, that's good. Let's see who's next. Mark.
See, 23?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And 4, please.
Okay. So after receiving him, they beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And again, he sent to them another slave, and that one, they beat over the head and mistreated.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's literally dishonored, yeah.
Dishonored, okay.
Shame, that'd be a good translation of it. Can you parse apostelen for us?
Let's see, that would be third plural, aorist active negative.
Close.
Singular.
Is it singular?
Mm-hmm. He sent. The owner sent. Aorist active negative, third singular from what?
Which one? Oh, I'm looking at the one in verse 3. Isn't the one in verse-
Oh, apostelon you're looking at. That is
did I get the
plural.
wrong one?
That is plural. I'm looking at the one in verse 4,
Right,
apostelen.
okay. Yeah.
All right. From what?
Dello, to send
Okay.
away, to send away.
All right. Now look at this participle. We haven't talked about aorist yet, but taking, and after taking him, they beat him. You might make an argument that participle right there, it's an aorist participle because of the aspect that the author, that Mark wants to give us here. It's just a simple, they took him. And if you take something, that's a word, right, that kind of goes along with the aorist idea. How can you progressively take something in this context, right? But they got a hold of him. I might argue that in this case, that aorist could even be concurrent action with the verb. They took him and beat him. Maybe they took him first and then they beat him, but it's a little slicing hairs a little bit, right?
That's I kind of saw it as a 1, 2, 3. They took him, they beat him, and they sent him away.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, that's why interpretation is a bit of an art, isn't it? Unfortunately, there's not going to be any theology that rests upon that. But we'll see more of that. We haven't studied the aorist, of course, so we'll see that later. They beat him. They sent, interesting in Kenan, they sent him empty, vainly. In other words, I think that's giving across the idea that he's come in vain. Right? Again, he sent him another servant, and that one they beat about the head into some. Yep. All right. That's very good. Let's see who's going to do. Let's see who's going to be doing. Robert. Now, when you're doing these, do these from your head, not from notes or books or cards or whatever, right?
I definitely will be tonight.
We have 5?
Yes, sir.
And again, let's see. And again, they sent, or he sent.
What word means again?
Oops. I thought that was all.
Alos means
Another.
Another.
Sorry. Okay, and he sent another. That makes more sense. Is that they beat him or?
And that
Well,
one,
Kai Kanon is just Kai and Ekanos
Oh.
joined together.
Sorry.
Crassus. We see that sometimes.
Okay.
So it means, and that one.
That one they killed. And again. Wait. And another.
Halus. Accusative plural here, but many others.
And many others? Okay. Okay. Those also. They,
Darrow.
you know that one?
Beating.
Okay. Those also they beat. And those they killed.
Okay. What tense is Darontes? And what tense is apotenantes?
And both appear to be aorists. Let's see, Duran. It's there's indicative third person. Plural.
Darontes, say it again.
Aorist indicative third.
It's not, well, it isn't indicative, is it? Yeah, participle.
Okay. I think the second one is a participle too.
They're both participles.
Okay.
Now I'm calling the Daron test. I don't see any reason why that isn't present. Does anybody else?
How would you translate that Usman Darante?
Well, some beating, some killing, some. You know, I mean, it's hard to get into English. But it's a relative pronoun. On the one hand, on the one hand, those beating. On the other hand, those killing. I got to check myself on the next participle because we do have a stem change there, but I'm thinking it might just be a variant spelling. The double nu could indicate a durative situation.
Pope just says it's a variant.
But it calls it a present participle?
He just calls it participle.
Oh, good. No help from the Pope, huh?
Just participle, and then it's a.
But he calls it a variant, so that I think he's
The
meaning
double
that.
is just a variant of the Yoda.
Okay, so it is a present, right? This is an odd situation where you have stem change, but it doesn't mean it's a second aorist. So the double nu. So often in stems, when you have a double consonant, that goes along with the durative idea, and you can see how that kind of goes along with it. So, for example, balo, I cast, that's present, 2 lambdas, right? But ebolon, second aorist, 1 lambda. See, the aoristic stem has 1 lambda, the progressive stem has 2 lambdas, and then you see that in many occasions. So I'm looking at this thinking, well, I lost my iota, but I gained a nu, so the double nu is still making me think progressive, durative, present tense. And so that's what I would say it would be. So we have 2 present tense participles, which makes me happy because we're studying the present tense tonight. So Robert, what use of the present do you think that we have here?
Will be instantaneous or using the
Well, with the
present
killed,
when he's-
it could be, I think there's a better one. No?
Maybe killed.
What tense would you expect here? Would you expect a present tense here? Some, they're killing, others, there are some they are beating, others they are killing.
Cause it's
Perfected.
Mm-hmm.
Result.
that's what I was thinking.
Imperfect sense.
Remember that we're in narrative here.
Well, historic present?
Nope.
Oh.
Well, I'm sorry. Yes, it is historic present. Because I'm thinking of the term dramatic present.
present.
Because I like that term.
Historical
But
dramatic.
it is yes, you're right. Absolutely, I'm sorry, my fault. Yeah, historic present, dramatic present. So I think it's just like the two cars pulling up to the stop sign. And some, they're beating, some, they're killing, right? This happened in the past, right? He's telling the story, and then he's using present tense for dramatic reasons, I think. All right. There we go then. Pastor Joe.
Yet he had one beloved son. He sent him to them at last, saying that they will respect my son.
Okay, excellent. What tense is entrapesantai?
I believe it's future.
You would be right. Let's give you a harder one. What tense is akin?
Aorist?
I don't believe so.
No. It's imperfect.
It is imperfect. That's right. And so, that leads us to an open question on that word, doesn't it? What use of the imperfect would that be? So he was having a beloved son. By the way, in the cheat sheet, is there not a misspelling? It says, the third one down in the imperfect says iterative. Should that not be iterative?
Maybe it's iterative.
Well,
No,
well, no, because you didn't have it once in a while.
The spell checker didn't look it up.
Yeah, I guess. Well, whose spell checker has iterative in it?
Progressive? Descriptive?
I think it could be that one.
Or, well, I'm not sure what other one would category fall.
Well, it could be customary. You could take either one, progressive or customary,
Yeah.
because he typically he was having this son, so you could look at that as something that was a normality to him. Why would it be in the imperfect? Well, that's the question I would ask, because you could have it in the aorist. He had a son. Say it simply. Why does he use the imperfect? There's got to be a reason something he's trying to communicate here, to use the imperfect when it seems like the aorist would be the simplest, most natural way to say it. Not that this is unnatural, but it seems like it's not the most straightforward way to say it. So he was having a son. Maybe even behind that is the duration of relationship there. It's not. In other words, he's not just passing by the fact that he had a son. He had a son. He's kind of almost mentally lingering on that point. He was having a beloved son, possibly. You see what I mean? Okay. Let's see. Can you do 7 for us as well?
But those vine dressers,
Yeah.
vine dressers, okay, where tenant farmers said to themselves that this is the heir. Come, let me see here, I've lost the line. Come, okay. That we may kill him. And
Pretty close.
the inheritance will be ours.
Okay.
Let us kill him.
Yeah, what use of the subjunctive is apotane no man.
I had to write hortatory?
Yep, hortatory subjunctive because it's a first person command sort of a thing. All right. Now, is this an indirect quote or a direct quote? In other words, how is Hati functioning here?
Indirect? No.
Well, if you follow the editors of our text,
No, it wouldn't be. Well,
the editors of our text have capitalized Huta.
so it would be direct.
So they're saying it's a direct quote. And that would fit. And they said to themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him. And the inheritance will be ours. Now, that's also a present, apotano man. It's a present active subjunctive, isn't it? So what kind of present is it, Pastor Joe?
Historical? No. Wait a minute.
Well, it's probably one of the first two. Okay? But you have to ask yourself the question, is he emphasizing the process of the killing or the fact of the killing? It doesn't seem to me like the process of the killing is important.
Just the fact that they want to do it.
Yes. So from that
So you're saying
standpoint,
instantaneous?
yes, from that standpoint you'd say instantaneous. But then you have to ask yourself the question, if that's true, why didn't he use the aorist? Because you could have used the aorist subjunctive here just as easily. Right? There's no reason why he couldn't use the aorist subjunctive here for this. So, and that would have indicated simply what's killing, right? But he uses the present. So maybe, in fact, the process of killing is important to the story.
Is that tied in verse 12?
Would the imperative before that have anything to affect it being a present or an aorist? Do you take?
No. That's a fixed form, basically. So I might lean to the idea that he could have used the aorist if he wanted to get across just a simple idea. So maybe that, this is a quote from them, let us kill him in the present tense, may indicate, the present nature. Maybe it is that, they are relishing the process of killing him. They'll even enjoy the process of killing the son. But maybe it is that,
I think what they're relishing is the idea of the inheritance.
That's true. That's
Being theirs.
that's foremost in the context. But why is that in the present tense? Now, an heiress that's killing and the inheritance will be ours. That puts our attention right, primarily on the inheritance part of it, because that's killing and. But present tense, that's killing. That takes a little bit of our attention away from that, I think. Why would they use the present tense? And it could be that they, because by this time, man, they've beaten servants, they've killed servants like crazy.
So it's
They
customary.
might like it.
Yeah, it's almost customary, yeah.
Let's keep killing whoever he sends.
Yeah, but I really wouldn't call it customary. I don't think that's right. But you know, it's
Habitual.
almost habitual, right? But it's almost as if the process of killing the
What
son.
about habitual? That's what they were doing.
Well, yeah, but you'd have to say killing him would be habitual, not just killing. Right.
Guess I can only do that once.
Yeah, right. So, you know, that's something to ponder, and you may decide that he uses a present tense in that he quotes them. Now, this is, you know, parable, right? But he is using the present tense as he quotes them to shine some light on the nature of their being so willing to be involved in the process of killing the son. Now, again, he's kind of talking about himself to the Pharisees, isn't he?
But isn't this the same thing you did before, the dramatic? That is, he's telling the story about what they did.
No, well, it isn't. You know, and they're killing him. It is
Right.
let us kill him. Let us kill him using the present, whose aspect is derivative. But what's the Atkian? Are we backing off of the typical aspect of a present to just a instantaneous present, or are we going to go with the derivative thing?
But it has a first person plural subjunctive ending.
Yeah, and that makes it hortatory subjunctive. Let us kill him. Well, I think you could probably make an argument that the evil nature of the vine dressers, being so willing to involve themselves in something that takes a process of killing, maybe in that present tense. Maybe it simply is there to emphasize the killing part of it, so that doesn't get lost.
Well, he does get mad, though, you're right. I mean, they get mad because they understand that the parable would be spoken about them.
Let us kill the present tense. Maybe it is in some sense dramatic, but I don't think it's dramatic in the typical sense of the use of the dramatic present.
Can the subjunctive be conditional without an if?
Without what?
Without any kind of word making it if? Like, could it be, if we kill him, then the inheritance will be ours, or just need the if?
We should kill him.
No, well, I mean, that gets across a similar sense, but that's not what it says. A hortatory subjunctive
Oh, we should
clearly would be let us kill him.
Yeah. Is every first person plural subjunctive hortatory?
No.
That's what I'm asking.
No, but in this context it clearly is.
You know, I like what Stacy said, though.
Yeah?
I mean, if you think about the Pharisees and the Herodians that were there listening to this, and when Jesus says, and they said, let us kill him, some of those guys are probably thinking the exact, they're feeling cut to the quick. They know he's talking about them. They probably thought the very same thing. Let's kill this guy. Let's kill this Jesus. Now, I don't know what kind of present that makes it, but it sure must have made it
Creepy.
convicting.
Now, let me just use this example to point out the value of this process of thinking through what kind of whatever it is. Right? Now, are you going to do that with every word? And every time you come to a verbal, you're going to say, what kind of present is this? You know, what kind of subjunctive is this? What kind of active is this? Or what kind of participle is this? No, you're not going to do that with every word for every sermon, every Bible study you do, right? But if something catches your attention, now if you could do that, it would help you, but there's just not time to do that. But if something catches your attention, and you start thinking in these terms, or if your mind is automatically thinking in these terms, you know, and you notice, oh, that's a present tense. Why is that present tense? You know, if there's a very good argument to be made for the necessity of spending time in the text, in various places of the New Testament. And I think that's really good how Dr. House has set it up so that, you do a lot of reading. You have this class that you took over the summer for a lot of reading. But you get a sense of, especially when you start reading Mark, you probably find the translation easier as we go, right? Because you're getting used to Mark. But when you see something that you say, well, he could have used an aorist there, and we might have expected that, but why is there a present? Remember, the present tense, it might be giving us a movie instead of just a snapshot here, right? So maybe the emotion behind it is, let's kill him. Instead of, all right, kill him! Sort of thing. So, I don't know. But anyway, there's value in thinking through these issues, even though you might only think through one or two of these issues maybe when you're preparing for a sermon, with one or two words. But there's value in having done that and asking yourself a question. So, you usually come to spots in a passage where you go, I wonder what that really means. Well, good exegesis is about asking the right questions of the text and then being able to answer them, right? Well, some of the right questions you ask of the text is, why is that a present? And how's that present functioning? Now, we have a bunch of categories here, and sometimes I think, you just don't have a good category there for that, for the use of that. I think it's used in this way, for this reason. And it doesn't mean I can necessarily put it in a real good, formal category, but I think I understand sometimes how that's being used. And, that could become, something like that could actually become a point in your sermon. I don't know that this would, but, the fact that that's in the present tense says something about the nature of these vine dressers. But it doesn't say anything different than what we've already seen. It just says something consistent with that what we've already seen.
And so does it say something about the nature of the Pharisees?
Oh, that's
By
the point.
extension.
That's absolutely that's the point. Yep. And it says something about Christians by further extension. Religious people, and Christians typically are religious people. Religious people ought to be very afraid of becoming like Pharisees, basically. And we do, much of the time. Become like a Pharisee. Cyrus.
Okay. Verse 8.
Seems like Adam gets an advantage.
Why are you saving the Septuagint for?
Huh? No, I mean, now you know when you're coming.
Reshuffle the paper.
Yes.
No. I'm teasing you. Yeah, reshuffle the papers.
Reshuffle.
Yeah, we shuffled again.
Yeah, we'll save the Septuagint for you. When you read quotes from the Old Testament, you're glad you're not taking Septuagint Greek. All right, go ahead.
And taking him, or they took him and killed him, and threw him outside the vineyard.
Go ahead.
Therefore, what will the Lord of the vineyard do? He will he will come and destroy the tenant farmers, and will give the vineyard to others.
All right, very good. Do you see anything in the present tense in those two verses?
No. Should I?
No, you shouldn't.
Oh, good. So I didn't.
You shouldn't.
Did I translate anything that way?
No,
Oh, good. Awesome.
I don't think so. I think you did fine. Let's see. Tell me about the use of something in there.
Okay. Well, elucitai comes from Erechomai,
Okay, good.
and it is, what's it called? future.
Well, since you picked that one, there's only one thing you could tell me about its usage, and that would be the mood. What mood is it?
I think it's a participle.
You do? That wouldn't be how you translated it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Now remember, he picked this word. I mean,
I wanted to challenge.
what can I do?
I know it's third singular. He will come.
So it's a future.
Mhm.
So what are the future endings?
Um,
Is there something? Is there something besides a future participle and a future indicative?
there must.
We don't have that many future participles,
Yeah, and then zero. In fact.
so it's probably a future active indicative. So therefore, what kind of indicative is it?
What kind of indicative?
Yeah, you know.
I would say. Kind of want to say conditional.
Conditional sentence?
I'm looking in here for the.
What would be
Yeah.
wrong with just a plain old declarative indicative? He will come. Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that either. I would agree with you.
Declared.
All right. Very good. Oh, Adam.
Have you not read this scripture? The stone which the builders rejected, this one came to be the head of the corner. This came from the Lord and is marvelous in our eyes.
No, it's not.
Last one. Last one.
Question mark.
Yeah, it
All right.
it
Well, how come you only did two verses?
It refers
I'm teasing you.
Oh, no, I did
to the happy.
That was trying to find something wrong. I don't know. Kind of make it hard to find something wrong sometimes.
The quote's
Pardon? Well,
the question mark.
the whole thing.
The question goes back to having.
Goes back to the beginning of verse 10. That's kind of a challenging beginning to verse 10, actually, right there. Let's see. I'm not noticing anything present in that either. Well, Eston is present, isn't it? All right, so what's the use of the present there? This is marvelous in our eyes.
Customary maybe, in the sense that he continues to be marvelous in our eyes?
Well, maybe. I think it's just a plain old progressive. But, however, you think about it, we're talking about the kind of action, aren't we? With a verb of being. It almost seems to me that we ought to have a stative use of the present tense, right? To express a state, Now, being in a state is inherently progressive, isn't it? It could be customary or whatever, but this is expressing a state. This is marvelous in our eyes. Yeah, probably progressive, I would say. Oh, can you parse oikadamun test for us? In the end of the first line of that quotation?
It is present active participle, nominative, masculine, plural, from oikodomeno.
All right, defend your view that it is a present participle, which is another present, by the way.
I believe it's a contract when the vowel changes, so I think it's non-test ending that contracted with epsilon.
Okay, so for the present, we have a contraction with the contract vowel and the coupling vowel of the ending, instead of having what?
Non-test.
Well, instead of having on test, but what would you expect to see outside the present tense? Instead of contraction.
Oh, a reduplication or no, you can't have reduplication. Augment.
No, you expect to see a lengthening. Now, if you have an augment and a participle, you'd expect to see a lengthening of the contract vowel, right? And a temporal infix. So if it wears, it would have a sigma temporal infix and a lengthening. So it would be oika me sante. All right. Well, there's a present. So what use of the present would that be? And that's not a very productive question sometimes with participles. Right.
Well, it could be the ones while they're building, since it's a stone that they rejected previously, and in the process of construction.
The builders rejected. That's probably just a progressive present. They were building. I mean, they could have been builders in the aorist, right? But they're in the process of building. So it almost paints a picture of, a stonemason, looking for the right stone to set the corner. I worked with masons for a summer, and the way you lay blocks is you start the corners. And you got to get the corners right because everything else keys off of the corners. Now if you're using blocks, it doesn't matter because they're all the same. But if you're using stones, you're going to want the right stone to be right at the bottom of that first corner, particularly the one that's very square, because the whole building keys off of that very first stone that you lay.
So is this the concept they rejected it, looked over the others and came back? Or, because if they rejected it, how did it become the cornerstone?
Well, because God put it in there.
Okay.
So the human builders said, no, that's not an appropriate stone. It's not good enough. But God said,
became evident to them that.
oh yes it is. Well, the builders never put it in, God did. I guess God built a different building.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Probably a spiritual building in that respect. I think you bring up an interesting point, because a mason's going to be maybe rooting through the stones until he chooses a large one for a corner, and that's what the Pharisees are. Those large, they think they're the chosen stone, and
That's right.
but then the ones that they rejected, obviously, became the interesting.
Okay, good. Who wants to read number 12 then?
I can try it.
All right.
And they were seeking to lay hands on him, and they feared the crowd. For they knew that he spoke the parable for them. Concerning that?
Literally toward them, of course.
And
A good translation might be he spoke the parable to them. But, the idea is about them, against them.
they knew he spoke, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And they left him and went away.
What kind of word is offentes?
Participle.
From what?
Theory.
Aphiemi, right? So after leaving him, they departed.
Right. That's good.
Okay, thanks.
What's translated, Dr. Stanley?
The second word there. What can you tell me about that word? What's it from?
I think it's from zeteo.
It is indeed.
Seek.
Okay, zeteo. So we have a contraction, don't we?
Yeah.
So that means we're in the present system. And you translate it as what?
Oh, imperfect.
And you translate it as an imperfect, all right? But let's ask ourselves the question: what kind of imperfect is that?
Oh boy. Could be aggressive.
It is.
They began seeking.
It is. Yeah, because clearly they weren't doing it before, right? Whenever you're a narrative and you see an imperfect, you always ask yourself the question: is this an inceptive imperfect or an ingressive imperfect? Because so often in narrative they are.
What was the option? Ingressive and what was the other one you said?
Well, just the typical, kind of
Inceptive.
progressive.
Oh.
It's the same thing, yeah. But yeah, they obviously at that point they began seeking to grab hold of him, to grab him. Obviously, while he's telling the parable, they're not trying to grab him. So it's fairly obvious by that context. Okay, very nice, very nice. All right, 13.
15, and they sent to him some of the Pharisees and the Herodians in order that they might trap him in a word or in a saying, in one of his sentences not making sense, perhaps, something like that.
Yeah, or trap him with a word, even an instrument of means there, possibly. Right? It could be a locative of sphere and the sphere of words. Probably is both.
Sphere of words, yeah.
Probably is both. Okay, what kind of genitive do we have here? Certain ones of the Pharisees and of the Herodians.
Reference?
Nope.
Partitive.
That's right. Okay, certain ones are part of the Pharisees and the Herodians. All right, we have a subjunctive, grusosin,
Right.
that they might
Third plural.
catch him, third plural. What kind of subjunctive do you think that is?
They might. Active.
Oh. Purpose result.
Oh, what kind of subject?
Yeah, probably purpose. This probably shows their purpose. Yeah, it's with henna, so in order that to show purpose. Okay. That was the purpose of them sending. They sent for that purpose,
Purpose result.
not purpose result, just purpose. There's a difference. Just purpose. Sometimes it's very hard to separate purpose and result, isn't it? Because if you have something as your purpose and you succeed, it's also the result. Now I don't think they succeeded here, so that's why I don't want to call it result.
Right.
Yeah, but it is very difficult to separate purpose and result sometimes. Now some grammars keep them totally separate, and he just said purpose, result. Some grammars will say purpose or result. He's given us a category that is purpose and result, because it is really hard to separate. All right, verse 14 then.
I'll try it.
All right.
And after coming, they said to him, Teacher, we know that you are good and that you do not care, you do not have
Well,
concern
This is a hard one. A lot of idioms right here.
concerning no one.
You are not It is not a concern to you concerning anyone.
So-
Well, that's an idiom, meaning that you don't worry about what people think of you. Right? And then it says, for you do not look into the face of men.
And it's interesting that before they said that, they used the perfect tense in oidamen. We have known this. This is, we have known this from since you started talking that you weren't afraid.
Well, oidamen, that's a perfect with a present meaning. Because it's really a perfect of we have seen and now know. So we know. So really that has a present meaning. So you could ask yourself what kind of present that is. We know. Okay, finish it off for us then. But
you teach.
who teaches? Still part of the quote. But
He teaches the way of God in truth.
yeah, but based on truth, you are teaching
Oh, you are teaching.
the way of God. And then they ask him,
Is it lawful to pay tax to Caesar or not? Should we give or should we not give?
okay, very good. So, then coming, they are saying to him, what kind of present is that? Don't hurt me now, you ought to know that right off the bat.
Legusun? No.
Yeah, legusin is a present. And after coming, they are saying to him,
Descriptive?
Yeah,
huh?
progressive.
Huh? Yeah, historical, dramatic,
Or dramatic.
dramatic present. They are saying to him, well done. Teacher, we know that you are genuine. Both of those, basically, for all intents and purposes, presents, oidamen and a, are probably progressive presents. Or, yeah, you could even argue that oidamen might be an instantaneous present. We know. You are not caring. That's probably customary, isn't it? Right? His habit, Jesus' habit. You don't care. You know, what that. No, to say you don't care is not the right kind of thing. It's just that you're not concerned about reputation. You don't look into the face of man. You're not a. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to get that into English. Somebody help me.
They're not concerned about what others might think
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
in their presence.
yeah. But based on truth, or upon the truth, the way of God, you are teaching, or you teach. Now that didaskes is probably customary too, isn't it? Habitual. You teach habitually. Then they ask him, is it lawful? And that might be, what do you think? Probably, well, it's in a question, but it's almost like proverbial, is it? If you take it out of the question, it is lawful to, so that might even be gnomic, yeah. It might even be gnomic, yeah.
That'd be my favorite one.
Yeah, is it lawful to give tax to Caesar or not? And then we have a couple of interesting subjunctives. Should we give or should we not give? And you could call those deliberative subjunctives because they're in a question. We're going to get a subjunctive in a minute that's not in a question. But there's almost, well, that's a deliberative subjunctive very clearly. All right, good. Verse 15.
I'll do that one because I kind of have a question about it.
All right.
And he knew their hypocrisy and said to them, why do you test me? Why are you testing me? Bring me a denarii in order that I may see it and look at it.
Okay.
And my question kind of goes along with that, the idiom that you do not look in the face of men. It's really interesting that in verse 15 he says he knew their hypocrisy, like he knew their hearts in this situation. I know the saying it kind of
he's,
idiomatic, but
and around the barn, it's saying he saw them. Yeah.
yeah,
But
for the
he
who they
didn't.
truly were.
You
Yeah,
saw
he-
beyond the face, you saw.
Yeah,
The heart. Yeah, yeah. See that? I think that's, boy, that preaches, doesn't it?
yeah, I hope so. Cause sounds good.
Because there is a difference between somebody who operates on the level of, on the shallow level of what, you know. I don't know if reputation is exactly the right word, but
Well, they're more concerned about their name than their word. I mean,
Yeah.
there's kind of like a difference.
well, it's almost like peer pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, popularity. There you go. Someone who operates on the basis of popularity, and someone who operates on the basis of heart. And boy, you could sure preach that and talk about, you know, the implications for ministry. Is it more important to have somebody popular in an important ministry position, or is it more important to have somebody with the right heart in an important ministry position?
Isn't it true? Whatever. That's, to me, it seems really ironic that they say, you don't see the face of man, and then basically at the exact same moment, Jesus is looking at them going, it's exactly right, be hypocrite.
Well, you got to understand the idiom. Well, when they hear that you don't look at the face of men, they're not hearing that literally
Yeah,
at
there's
all.
still the idea behind it.
But
Right?
no, well, they're not. That's not. If we hear an idiom, you know, try to think of an English idiom. We don't even. It doesn't even have it. The literal meaning of that idiom doesn't really have an impact on us at all. It totally escapes us. We hear the meaning of the idiom.
But the idea behind the idiom, isn't it that same thing? Is that Jesus doesn't take people at face value, at their popularity, like you're saying?
No, it is. What it means is that Jesus is not motivated by popularity, social status, those sorts of things. So, like if I said, you know, and it's true, last night my son threw up. You immediately think of throwing up. You don't think of throwing up. You know, there's no sense in which literally throwing comes to your mind, right?
Well, it's sort of.
Well, in a completely different
That's the
sense.
word hurl.
Yeah. Well, that's not even a very good example of an idiom. If I could think of an actual English idiom.
It's a protein spill.
Yeah. Well, it was shrimp, but anyway. He only made it to the sink, and it plugged up the sink, and it's quite difficult to get it unplugged. Which kind of surprised me. Must have been a bunch of hair in there with it. I don't know. Anyway.
I love this. It's on tape.
That wasn't on the tape. You can always tell when it's getting close to 9 o'clock. People on the tape need to realize this happens late in the evening. Anyway, but you see what I'm saying about an idiom, that you're not really thinking, the literal meaning, the literal sense of the idiom doesn't even come to your mind. The meaning of the idiom comes to your mind. And yet, I think it's valid to say, you know, here it is, he is not, you know, looking at the social status of the people. And in the writing, there is a juxtaposition of the idea of blepo and harao. You don't look into the face of men, but you know, but he knew, he saw them for what they really were. You see what I mean?
Because even in their hypocrisy, they're kind of, like you're saying, they were concerned with the way people saw them.
Right, oh yeah.
Right.
He is describing Jesus in a quality that is opposite of them. You know, he's not concerned about social status and popularity and those sorts of things. What he's concerned about is truth, and they're recognizing this based on the truth of God.
So that was
So,
obvious to them because he just cleared out the temple.
yeah. So why are they saying this to him? Are they saying this to, you know, butter him up? Do they really recognize this, or are these values that they, you know, that they think are good values and that they kind of purport to hold but don't, or what? You know, and so they're thinking about all of those things is kind of an interesting. So, you know, there's a whole lot of sermon here. Can you see how if you read your passage in the Greek New Testament when you're preaching or teaching, that you end up with so much to say that you can't say it all,
Right.
and you just don't have to go elsewhere for stuff. And to me, getting your stuff to preach and teach from the text instead of from people who have looked at the text
Right.
is far, far superior. That doesn't mean you don't get illustrations and tell stories and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the meat of your teaching and preaching now can come from the text. Not from some author you read over here. Fine with authors, fine with reading books, fine with getting ideas. I do that, but still.
Have you gotten to a point where you start with the original, and then do you, at what point, or do you check yourself with maybe a commentary or what someone else has said who's looked at it as well, or do you get to the point where you don't look at that as much, or?
I have to admit that I rarely look at commentaries.
Because I always be afraid that I start getting comfortable, or think I'm getting comfortable, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss something.
Well,
So
what I do though, and it's almost not fair to say I don't look at commentaries. What I do is I probably look at things like grammars more,
okay.
and that's why this grammar, Wallace becomes a great resource, especially the big one, right? Because if I can find if I'm wondering what a verse means, and I can find that in the index and go to Wallace and see if he says something about it, and he's giving me grammatical reasons, and either he supports what I'm thinking or doesn't, that becomes my commentary. And so, in a sense, I'm kind of sticking with primary or
Right.
first level sources rather than grabbing a commentary, written by a guy who hopefully looked at the grammars as well. But I can do that work. In other words, it's not that and I think your point is well taken. It's not that you want to do this in isolation,
Right.
but I become the commentator
Right.
who's relying on the other sources, and that puts me one level closer
Right.
by doing that. And when you're staying on the reservation and when you're not, right? And sometimes you need to get off the reservation because our kind of Christian, our kind of Christianity, we can't possibly have it all perfectly right, But I want to be really careful before I get off the reservation. Really be confident of what I'm saying and have good reasons, and then I will have done more checking. And when I know I'm getting off the reservation, that's when I might start checking commentaries and seeing if I'm doing something stupid or whatever. But how do you know if you're on the reservation or not? Well, that's why you take things like theology and things like that. If you really get a good grasp of theology, that's critical. I think having a good grasp of theology is just as critical as a grasp of the language. Because you know very well that you could start using the language to say a million things from the text, but it becomes your theology that sort of keeps you going in the right direction. And when I say theology, I'm just saying we're applying the teaching of all of Scripture. I'm keeping as much as I can the teaching of all of Scripture in mind as I look at this verse. So if I interpret this verse in a way that is completely skewed compared to the teaching of the rest of Scripture, either I found a contradiction in the Bible, need to write a book, or I'm not understanding it right. I'll pursue the latter first and see, if that's the case. Now for the tape, I'm being a little bit facetious about that. I don't expect to find contradictions in the Bible, right? But you have to know your limitations as well. When I was a student, I did a lot of talking to professors, particularly, and Dr. Retland was one in particular. When I was a student, I thought, I wonder if that's what that means, and it's not really what I've heard. I'd call him on the phone. I've called him on the phone many times. I'm looking at this aorist in whatever verse. You think it could mean this, And sometimes he'd say, I think you got a good point, or you're someplace out on a limb and you're going to fall off, or whatever, right? Once you get a lot of experience under your belt, then you can very carefully, start to step out a little bit, right? But again, you got to look at the job of interpreting Scripture is not really a solo job. None of us can do this by ourselves. We have to interpret Scripture within the community of the church. The Bible doesn't belong to me as an individual entirely, and the job of interpreting it doesn't belong to me as an individual. That's why we have to do this together. And if I come up with an interpretation and everybody else who also views the Bible like me and has a similar theology to me, if everybody else or virtually everybody else is telling me you're whacked, I need to be humble enough to back off of it. See? Because, I don't take a Catholic view of the Bible where, church authority is equal to Scripture. But we interpret Scripture in community, not in isolation. And I've known people who have developed a habit of interpreting Scripture in isolation. And invariably, they get really skewed in their theology and in their understanding of the Bible. Because if you put any of us off in the corner by ourselves, that's exactly what would happen. What question brought that up?
That helps answer Mark's question too, that if we are young and we're interpreting Scripture in community, then there is the elder-younger, there's a relationship in community that keeps us well within the boundaries of edification.
That's right. And that's all a commentary is. That commentary is somebody else that I can interact with on an interpretive level. The thing that frustrates me about a commentary is most of the time they don't ask the questions I want an answer to. Because I'm wanting an answer to the hard questions. And they're not going to ask the hard questions because they want the easy questions. Right? And so that's the frustrating thing about a commentary.
Do you have a favorite one that you feel gets you down to that primary level, or?
Well,
or is that mainly just
some of the good, solid, critical commentaries, and since each book of the Bible is written by a different person, but I think in general the Word commentary series is good. I think that it's not evangelical, but the Hermeneia series, at least in the book of Hebrews, is really good. But any comment, you can tell when you open up they're for different purposes. It doesn't mean they're bad if they're not a good critical commentary. But for our purposes, if you open up a commentary and you're getting a lot of stuff about the background historically, a lot of stuff. And if it's based on the Greek text and you're getting a lot of the kind of stuff we're talking about here, if that's what you're seeing in the commentary and you can tell it's done in a solid way, then that's the helpful stuff. And that one probably won't shrink away from the hard questions as much as a devotional commentary. But the thing that I have closest to my desk at church are all of my language tools. That's what I decided, where I just put my library in my new office, right? The first thing I decided where it's going to go is my language stuff, and that's where I can get to it quickest, right? Because that's where I'm going to go. And when I'm working on my computer, which I do a lot, when I'm searching, I'm looking at that. What I have on there, what I have not bought, is a bunch of commentaries. What I have bought are, grammatical helps and that kind of a thing. And I find that I just don't have time nor the need to go much further than that. And I can say, I can in preaching and teaching, I can get across what I'm very confident of and what I'm very sure is on the reservation, without having to get into the other stuff and still not have time to finish that job. Right?
Would you, in your typical goal of prep, will you diagram a passage? Do you go that far each time, or does it depend?
Well, I rarely diagram a passage now, but I do it in my mind. But I'm not a person who takes extensive notes in my preparation, because for me, how I prepare profoundly affects how I deliver. And if I prepare a lot on paper, I'm tied to paper in my delivery. If I prepare a lot in my mind, I'm freed from the paper in my delivery. So I take very few notes, even into the pulpit, and I virtually take no notes in preparation.
More
But that's just me.
meditation on it.
Yeah, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So, but you know, if I came across an issue where it was complicated and the structure of the sentence was important for the meaning of the thing, and I was trying to figure out the meaning, yeah, I'd whip it out and diagram it. But I can diagram most sentences right in my mind and see the structure of them. And it's not important for me to have that. You know, okay, I've preached through the book of Philippians, and I have all these notes on it. I know one pastor friend of mine who actually creates these beautiful booklets I mean, they could be published, and that's awesome. You know, these notes and stuff. It's just not a goal of mine to have that. It's not important for me to have that, so I just don't do it on paper. You know, my goal is more immediate. I want to perform the best, you know, Sunday morning, for example. And if I've prepared using a lot of paper, then I'm real stuck to paper on Sunday morning. But until you get to the point where you can diagram sentences in your head, doing it on paper is necessary. All right, what verse are we on here? We should try to finish up.
Verse
Okay,
16.
who's whipping through that?
And they brought it to him? Is that what that is?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they brought it to him.
Okay, what use of the article is that, by the way?
It's the personal pronoun.
That's right, that's right. It's used as a personal pronoun, right? So that article there functions as the subject of the sentence. They, okay? Very nice. Yeah, that's right. All right, so they brought it to him, and
he said to them.
okay, what use of lege is that in the present? Don't hurt me.
Present?
It's present tense. What use of the present?
Instantaneous?
No, you're hurting me. You're killing me here.
Oh, sorry. Wait. What? Dramatic?
Dramatic or historic use.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's put the face. Oh. Let's see. Who? Plural. Whose picture and signature is this?
Well, this image and likeness is understood of whom?
Okay.
Because that's in the genitive, right?
Of whom?
Possessive genitive, I suppose. Is whose image? All right. Could dwell on that, but we're running out of time. And
Okay. And they said to him,
same use of the article, by the way.
yep, Caesar.
Caesar's. All right. Go ahead.
Let's see. And Jesus said to them, what is Caesar's?
Literally,
give-
the things of Caesar's.
Yeah.
Give. Aorist imperative.
Give the things of Caesar to Caesar, and the things of God to God.
And
And they marveled. Is that?
that's right. They marveled upon him. They marveled over him. They
Yeah.
marveled on the basis of
On
him.
the basis of
They
him.
marveled at him, or whatever. You do know here what Jesus is getting at. The image of Caesar is on the coin, so give the things of Caesar, which is indicated by his image being on it, to Caesar, and the things of God. What indicates what is the things of God? Could it be God's image? And we are image bearers, so give therefore yourself to God. You can give the money to Caesar, give yourself to God.
It seems like he's saying, well, these little things belong to Caesar, so give him that, but, everything else, like you say, like, your life and your service and, everything else you have. Well, not
All right.
Caesar's.
Well, I was hoping we'd get through verse 27, but I think we're not going to make that tonight.
Did you want to get to verse 27?
Well, if you want to keep going, I'm happy
I thought
to.
we were supposed to go to 20.
Yeah, you're just responsible quiz-wise for, you know, up to verse 20, but we're supposed to be, you are reading the whole chapter on some level, right?
Sure.
Hopefully. But it's just good stuff in here, you know.
That's true.
Here's where they're trying to catch him, right? And they ask him the question, you know, the whole thing about a man dies, he doesn't have kids, and his brother, and there's 7 brothers, each one of them in succession take the wife, and none of them have kids, and when they die, they're trying to prove to Jesus the absurdity of the idea of resurrection. And Jesus' answer is rather depressing to me at this point in my existence, because he says to them, you know, you're not really understanding the reality here, because there is no marriage or giving in marriage in heaven. We are like the angels. I guess that would be fine then.
I think we'll be okay.
We'll still hang out, don't worry.
Yeah, verse 25.
I have made a deal with my wife, though. I will get to live in her mansion, or at least visit from time to time. Which is a good deal. I suggest you make that deal with your wife while you can.
Because if
Well,
she's putting up with a pastor in her
Well,
house.
y'all don't expect to have as good a place in heaven as your wife.
There's something to think about, right?
At least she says now that she wants to hang out in heaven. See, hopefully that will continue on. I mean, you know, when we get those resurrection bodies, that's going to be pretty cool. Maybe I've spent too much time thinking about that. Anyway, verse what?
Oh, we're done.
That was 25 that you were.
Oh, that was verse 25. All right, very good. Was that tape on this whole time?
Yes.